do that.
Okay.
Yep, we are good.
Okay.
Okay. Let me, all right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Portsmouth's Coffee Talk Evening Edition Show. My name is James Slim Overton, and I'm one of the hosts here with Leah Drake Stitt and Thomas the Colonel Chapman. Good evening, hosts.
Good evening.
Good
Yeah.
evening.
And we're going to get right into it. We have a special guest with us tonight. And but before we do that, I gotta since we have a lot of educators on this month, I got a press release here. And if you let me read this, the Alpha Chi chapter, Portsmouth, Virginia, of the National Sorority of Psi Delta Kappa Incorporated, a nonprofit organization for professional educators with chapters throughout the United States, will host their 75th annual Youth Leadership Conference on March 17th through the 19th, 2023 at the Sheraton Norfolk Hotel. We anticipate over 260 high school girls and boys, respectfully known as the Zenos and the Kudos.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard that before.
Yes,
These
indeed.
these Zenos and Kudos will participate in relevant workshops that address positive aspects of personal and academic development, focused on the theme withstanding the pressure to become a diamond, be the change that you want to see. They will also participate in activities and competitions, orally, talent, essay, poster displays of science projects, and many others. The participants return to school highly motivated for academic, social, and personal achievements. And if you want more information about this, I'm going to post and pin on my page and the Portsmouth Coffee Talk page. But this is something that a sorority group of former and present teachers, educators, that's something that they do. And this year it's going to be in this area, what they do for our youth. So I thought that was something we need to do. Now, Colonel, if you want to do your disclaimer, and then we can.
Yes, for those out there in electron land, the views or statements stated on this program are those of the guests and the host and no one else, and we don't represent any other entity that is not disclosed. So continue on.
Okay, and again, welcome everybody on Facebook Live, and we're here, Portsmouth Coffee Talk Evening Edition, with a special guest, Wilma Hopper. I'll mention the Hopper Horne. And she is our special guest today, and I'll just tell you a little bit about her. She IC Northam grad, Hampton Institute, now Hampton University, graduate and with a degree in mathematics and physics, and also a master's degree in mathematics education. She taught for 7 years in the Chesapeake school system, and has a 30-year information technology career in corporate America. And she ascended, let me see, trying to read my own writing. She ascended to senior management for air products and chemicals for, is that Xerox? Am I correct?
Actually, the senior management started at Unisys.
Oh,
I
okay.
started the career Air Products, went on to Xerox, Unisys, and then Johnson Port Authority, by the way, of New York and New Jersey.
The Port Authority for New York and New Jersey.
Right.
So you
And I settled out at Johnson & Johnson. That's where I
Johnson
retired.
Johnson. So thanks, very accomplished, and thanks for agreeing to be on the show. And first thing I have to say, that the ultimate thing for any graduate of a HBCU like Hampton University is to have one of the buildings named after you, and you
Yes.
have achieved that. And it's the Science and Technology building on the campus of
Right.
Hampton University. Now going back now, you've been a math and science person all your life. Growing up, how were you influenced by somebody? Now you grew up in the Truxton neighborhood. We're very familiar with you, Leah and I. And was it you influenced by someone to be in science and technology? Because at a certain point back at Norfolk, they were encouraging us for excellence, but it was expectations throughout the communities and some of the Black communities that certain areas we would go into,
Right.
and science wasn't one of them, even though a lot of us were going into it. Where was your motivation as far as starting there at Norcom or before Norcom to get into science and math?
Well, I had a natural talent for it. I mean, I was very good in the courses, math and science courses while I was at Norcom. But the real motivator to proceed with a career in not only math, which is a precursor, obviously, to a career in technology, occurred when I was 15 years old. In those days, young girls would go to Long Island to be mothers' helpers for often Jewish families. They would call, send ads in the paper locally, and we would respond and go up there. And I did that, and I did it for 3 years with the same family. And the beauty of that was I got to know the neighbors on the street, and it just so happened that one of the neighbors was an actuary for a major insurance company. And we talked about the possibility of, they were about to install their first computer. And we talked about the background and interest in all of that. And he let me know that math was a good way to get into it. So since I was naturally good at it in the first place, I pursued a career in math, and I just had to look for the opportunity to make the transition to technology. That took a few years.
Okay, you said you had to look for the opportunity. So, the doors weren't really open for you. It wasn't something that people were saying, hey, come on, Wilma, you need to be here.
Well, that didn't work like that in the 60s. In the 60s, remember, I graduated high school, college in 64.
Mhm.
I was married. I had 2 children. I married at the end of my freshman year of college. I had 2 children, and I went on to teach, which is what everybody expected anybody with a degree in math and science to do, is go to teach. And I proceeded to do that. But the pay was so small, I can tell you that was so small, and I don't know, you wouldn't remember, they only paid you 10 months a year. So you had to save enough money to live the other 2 months a year. And with the family, I decided that life had to be a little bit better than this. So I revisited the thought process of, at that point I was divorced, and I said, before I do anything else, let me go back and pursue that interest in technology. And I did so by going to some local, what they used to call them, job fairs. They were holding one in particular for people coming out of the Navy at the end of the Vietnam War, I think it was. They were holding a big one in Norfolk. And I called to ask if I could attend. They said, sure. So I went over and interviewed like everybody else, and ended up with my first job offer at Air Products in Pennsylvania. And I just decided I would just bite the bullet and take it.
Yeah, by the way, this is our first guest on, or as we celebrate Women's History Month this month, and you'll see a lot of accomplished women all month. I'll ask this last question. When you, math and science, and when you were in school and even at Hampton, were you aware of the ladies that were portrayed in the movie The Hidden Figures and what they were doing?
Not the women in particular, but they were in school around the same time I was there. And one of the career paths coming out of Hampton could have been going into, what did I call it? You get a GS rating and go to work at the federal base. That was a possibility. That was an opportunity. The problem is, for women in this area, we would always get knocked off by retiring military who had point preference over us. So you often didn't get to the top of the ladder there. So I was aware of it. Corps of Engineers was one of the places that I had several friends coming out of college with me who did end up going to work for the Corps of Engineers over on that side over there near Newport News and Hampton area. So we were all of the same generation, did the same kind of stuff.
Wilma, when you were at Norcom, were there any teachers who influenced you while you were there?
Oh gosh, yes. Fantastic teachers.
You want to talk about 1 or 2 of them, maybe?
Well, you remember, I don't know if you may not remember these ladies. Let me see, can I think of a name or two? Hampton area. At this stage of the game, I'm struggling with them. I'm gonna think this Mr. White was a math teacher.
Mr. White, yes, he was.
Okay, and there were two women that
Was it-
were tall, striking, dark woman.
Yes.
That,
Oh goodness, I just had her name and that
Okay.
just left me.
Was
Mrs.
that Miss-
Williams.
Was Miss
yes,
Williams?
yes,
Miss
yes.
Williams, yes,
Right,
yes, yes,
Was a
yes.
strong teacher also. So, and they were, I mean, teachers at Norcom were generally very, very encouraging, especially, you know, if you're a good student and they work with you.
Uh-huh.
And I was interested, so they really did work with me.
Yeah, they were encouraging and they prepared you, but then you had to go out there to that world, that cruel
I
world.
don't know what they were preparing me for. I thought it was to be a teacher, but thank goodness the preparation transcended to something else.
But when you transitioned from teaching to go up north to work, and you had two small children then, am I
Yes,
correct?
that's
How
right.
did you maneuver that transition there?
Well, that was really quite interesting. They were 6 and 8 at the time. And in those days, corporations did not know how to relocate single women with children.
Right.
They relocated single people and they relocated single men. I mean, they relocated married men with children.
Mm-hmm.
But that classification of single women with children was something that they did not have rules and regulations to deal with it.
Uh-huh.
So when they expressed interest, and remember this was at the time that they were working hard on affirmative action, I was interested in doing it. And when they expressed their interest, they engaged me in writing up the rules and regulations for how we handle that. So
Uh-huh.
I got to do that twice at Air Products. I got to do it at Xerox later on how to in fact deal with it, which means when I say deal with it, you've got to go up there to interview. You got to go up there and find a house. You know, you got to go up there to find a place for your kids to go to school. So
Uh-huh.
they pay for several trips for you to come up in addition to actually hiring you and do it before you reported to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you said before you went to Xerox, you were with what company?
Before I went to Xerox, I was with Air Products and Chemicals in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh. And what did you do for Air Products and Chemicals?
That's where I started my career in IT, in information technology. I was a programmer.
Okay, all right.
Program systems. Now I'll give you an interesting story about that. But in those days, I don't know if it's still true or not, but when you program systems, you end up usually working on the most difficult systems first, like those in the manufacturing environment and the ones in finance and personnel, because they're very critical and you have to be absolutely accurate with them. But in those days, they had not gotten smart enough to encrypt data. So when you tested your work out, you got to see live data. So I'm looking here in my test, looking at the live data for the whole corporation, and I'm seeing, you know, how people are progressing job-wise.
Uh-huh. So everything was just laid before you there.
In my face. So I had to ask the question, you know, well, why is this not happening for me? And some of these people, one of them was a person that we were training.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, why is this not happening for me? That man told me that, you know, you're a Black woman up here. You're in a pretty good position. You're lucky to have such a job.
Mm.
I said, okay, I am. I agree with that. But all of my jobs came as a result of headhunters coming to look for me.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time a headhunter came to look to me, I said, you know what? I moved once, I can move again.
Uh-huh.
I'm a little bit smarter now, so we're gonna negotiate a little bit better now on salary. And that move was to Xerox, and I thought I was smart enough to tell them the salary I wanted, and they gave me more than I asked for.
Oh, wow. That's always a blessing.
Always the best.
Always a blessing. And how long did you stay with Xerox?
I stayed with Xerox 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And Xerox was very critical to my career because they were fantastic trainers of managers.
Mm-hmm.
They were a relatively new company. They hired in experts to train managers for the company. And I got the opportunity to experience that. I mean, they had a rigorous process where you trained a year before you became a manager. Once you became a manager, you trained again to make sure you got those skills down pat. And then you train to move up the line. So over that 10 years, I went to Xerox as a programmer analyst, which is one step up from a programmer.
Uh-huh.
Left there as a middle manager. I left there when I was at Xerox. I was in Rochester, New York area for 7 years. Then I went to Vienna, Virginia, also with Xerox for 3 years to manage their data center there. And that was my first experience managing something where I had a superior on site. So that was a good training ground. And from there,
Yeah. I know most people who went up there and worked for Xerox, they all spoke of the great experience that they had working for the company.
oh yes, they trained you well. They had they were very active on the affirmative action front. There were a lot of people in the pipeline, so
Mhm.
you could create relationships with people who could help you in various aspects of the company.
Colonel?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting as I listen to your journey and for your life journey, and I'm looking at from the lens of the 1960s, and I could see you as a Black female going up in corporate America, especially corporate white America, and with all at the turn of the civil rights movement as we as a people gained more rights as we went. But I think you overcame a lot of the prejudice that was inflicted on you, because what I tell young folks now, you have to excel at what you do, and you excelled at what you did at the time. And so I think if I could ask, what would you tell a young person coming out of Hampton or any of the universities around here that were stepping off for their own first career move right out of college? What would be your advice to them?
Well, the interesting point, because you never overcome the prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
That's always there.
Yes.
But recognizing it's there,
Mm-hmm.
keep your eye on the prize, and
Yes.
don't let it distract you from what you're trying to do.
Yes.
It is still true that you have to be not as good, you have to be better. It is still
Exactly.
true that you have to be better than the average person, because you cannot be held at fault for failing to do your job properly.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that luxury. They don't give you a second break. You know what I'm saying? And they use not only the fact that you failed at it as an opportunity to paint all the others with that failure.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to keep your eye on the prize and keep your game strong, and all that little stuff that goes around you that's prejudice. They honestly can't talk to you about it anyway, so you don't have to pay attention to it. They might hurl it that you know what they're saying, but I don't have to listen to it.
Yeah.
Acting like it didn't exist.
Well, and actually, that's a good point. And I always tell them, tell young folks, as I was coming through my career, is saying you have to go into the game, and I call the game of any organization,
Right.
is you have to have twice as much to sit in the same chair. So if the game says you have to have one master or your baccalaureate and maybe a master's, you need to get you 2 masters. You had to do this, you got to have twice as much just to be equal. And no matter how high you get, always remember in the back of your mind, you can't show off and go off, but you remember that you're always Black.
When I retired as a VP of Johnson and Johnson's largest company, I was still the only Black person sitting in the room.
Yeah.
And that was 30 years later.
And that's what I wanted to ask you as well. When you went to the first job in New York, you were the only Black in on that position as well, right?
Well, lower in the organization, when you were programmer trainee, there were a lot of people in the pool.
Okay.
But when you begin to get to the management ranks, that's when it thins out.
Yes.
And then when you got to Xerox.
And then when I got to Xerox is where I got into the management ranks. I think there was one other Black woman who was a manager. And the reason that's significant is when they did their diversity training, they wanted us to be in the training sessions.
Exactly.
2 or 3 of them you got to know. So there was one other woman there, but she, surprisingly enough, the pressure of being in that position took a mental toll on her. So I still keep in touch with her, but she left the business and left anything associated with working and almost lives on the street. It just took everything she had.
Right, right, right. Goodness gracious.
You know what? That also goes back to say we need to develop a network of support. And back in those days, because there was only two of you, it was hard to get a network of support either in the job or in the family to support. And I guess the other person just didn't have that family or in the organization, and basically met her career demise.
Well, I lucked out and strategized both.
Mhm.
I don't think my family ever knew what I did for a living. But when I left Xerox, I went to a company called Unisys, which was there used to be old Burroughs and an old
Right.
Sparrow. They merged.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
I went there to lead that merge for a piece of that company.
uh-huh.
And when it all settled out, it was a very difficult battle. The corporate takeover, top managers lost jobs, and it was really a difficult situation to work in. So at that point, I was thinking about coming back home. So the question was, what kind of job could I come back home to? Now, Virginia happens to have quite a few port authorities. They got the port authority over there in Port Norfolk area. They've got the port authority. So I started looking for where could I get port authority experience. Well, here comes the headhunter. And the headhunter has a job for me at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I said, perfect. I was living in New Jersey. I didn't have to move. All I had to do was get in and out of New York City. So I took that job. Now, when I say I lucked out, New York City, is a very, very diverse place. And it just so happened that the Port Authority had several Black managers. I think there are about 4 of us. And we created among ourselves and a few others of the next level, a little group. We used to call ourselves the Port Authority Kitchen. And that ended up becoming my support group. And today I'm still in close contact with 2 of the women out of that group.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So they help you maneuver all the stuff. And we talked about what was going on. And it just worked out that I was able to create that network. And as I've moved from jobs, I've always remained in touch with at least 1 or 2 people that I met where I was. And so they've all still remained a part of my life as well.
And that network, that little kitchen group that you formulated, was it comprised of both men and women, or mostly women? Men and
all
women?
over the Port Authority. We would get together, and the Port Authority encouraged it, by the way.
Uh-huh.
We would get together for luncheon. And by the way, Johnson & Johnson did the same thing. They encouraged it. So you would get together, but at the Port Authority, they were all in the same place. At Johnson & Johnson, they had to come from all over the world.
Uh-huh.
So right there in New Jersey, you couldn't find but 2 or 3. But when you dug all over the whole company, you could find, by the way, 14.
Yes.
14 Black VPs.
Yes.
And by the way, interesting fact for Hampton toot here. At the time that I was there, of the 14 VPs from 86,000 employees throughout Johnson & Johnson, of that 14, 3 of them were Hampton graduates.
Wow.
Treasurer of the company, the president of a company, and me.
Wow, that says a lot for our HBCUs.
Yes, it does. It really
The
does.
education you can get there, don't slack us.
That's right. They prepare you for the world. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because if you can make it through the HBC, you can make it anywhere.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, it definitely
Well,
prepares you.
Wilma, you've been involved in technology, and with the technology today with social media, it has a lot of people that influence a lot of our young people. How important it is, do you think, is for our young folks and our students and even people our age to be influenced by the history that you have made. And thank God for the Hidden Figures movie, which opened a lot of our eyes, us
Right.
older people that didn't know about these
Mhm,
ladies.
mhm.
You better get the story in front of them. And
Yeah.
social
Exactly.
media is one way to do it.
Uh-huh.
So it's so important we always talk about in this show about knowing your history, and especially our people in math and technology, our STEM students need to know that history,
Yes.
because it's encouraging to them to know that they can do the same thing.
Absolutely. And I'm beginning to see more and more instances. I don't know where the sources of this information are. I mean, they do give themselves credit for it, but I don't pay that close attention to following it. But they begin to insert more and more stories about Blacks who have been successful in all kinds of areas over the years and not restricting themselves to just a short period of time. They go back, into the I saw a story the other day about somebody in 1937. So as people are uncovering this information, they're able to put it out there for the kids to see. And I think that's the value of social media. The downside of it is what the kids choose to use. And I don't think, when I say social media, I really didn't even choose to be an expert at it. But when they play with the TikToks and that stuff, they're just playing with it, as
Yes.
opposed to being on the backside of the programs and writing them where the money could be. And I'm beginning to see introductions now of algorithms and ways for programs to be written. I'm even seeing games being created for children, where they're beginning to encourage the children to write programs, not just play the games.
You know, Wilma, you really spoke something that a young man who's a Norcom graduate who's living in California now, he wanted to come back to teach the children how to use what is that, TikTok and all those other social media platforms, how to use it to their benefit, not just for social reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it looks like the schools need to develop programs now that will bring those programs into the schools, because the kids are so far removed from some of the subjects that are being taught in the school now.
I agree with you, Leah. I keep my eyes on a lot of things. I just haven't been an ex-teacher, and looking at the workload that's placed on the teacher, I don't know how in the world you have the resources or the ability to get the attention of the children.
True, that's true. That's true.
I mean, I agree with you that that's the right thing to do, but I don't see how it's going to happen in the short order.
No, it's not. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
One of the problems, though, with what Leah was saying is that because we have these new standards and they need to pass this SOL, and so teachers are just turned into robots. I got to make these kids spit out this information so they can pass this one-time test, so they can get out of it, and I can stamp their diploma and tell them hit the road. We don't care if they have any creative thinking or any creative thoughts. We just want them to say, I passed this SOL and move on and get the next.
Exactly.
They're not even encouraging the creative thinking that we experienced in school. I mean, we debate teams, for example. When have you seen a debate team?
Exactly.
Can't even field a debate team. Teacher doesn't have time to do that.
That's right.
And that's another thing too, with the amount of time that teachers have to spend in planning and preparing for SOLs, they really don't have the time to host those programs after school. You remember when we were in school, there were all kinds. There was a forensics club, the Rap Bunch Social Studies Club. I mean, you had the Science Club, the Spanish Club, the French Club. All of those clubs were taking place, and all of those clubs were hosted by our teachers.
Absolutely.
But
I was telling somebody
they don't have the time anymore.
You're right. I was telling somebody the other day about the value of extracurricular stuff. I played tennis, I played basketball. I certainly participated in the math clubs because that was where I got my experience to turn into the scholarships. And you're right, all kinds of things. But every one of those things gave a teacher another opportunity to influence you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and all those things you did, Wilma, kept your mind occupied. idle mind, you know what they say, the devil trying to creep in there. But just having all those things to do just kept you vibrant and kept you focused. Even though your love was for math and science, but you had those other things to sort of give you that break from it.
I like to be. I like to consider myself pretty well rounded.
Uh-huh,
Guys like smart women. You remember that? They don't like smart women.
But and as we talk about what we're talking about now, the other challenge is, we talk about this all the time, them trying to, erase or cut back on the history.
Back on history.
And at the same time, well, we're trying to encourage our younger folks to study the history, not only know how many points Wilt Chamberlain scored or how many rings Bill Russell has, but know about people like you and the accomplishments you have made.
But that's where I think social media can make a difference. The school system might be trying to put restrictions on teaching it, but you can't restrict getting information in front of the kids. So somebody needs to target the kids in the social media where they are with this information. And it's easy to get the hands on, it's easy to get it in front of them and make it visible to them.
Yeah, and that comes down to, how many likes and if those opportunities were available on social media, then it's up to the parents in the home to say, okay, you're gonna have to spend a certain amount of time watching this educational programming. The parents have to put the foot down, like our parents did. I mean, they said what they said, and we did what they said, told us to do.
That's exactly right.
Even if it was just for an hour, even if you put a kid in front of something of substance for an hour, you planting a seed right there. That's
but
going.
The point is, you can put them in front of something of substance with you. Matter of fact, my daughter and I on Sunday morning, I happened to visit her, and she had taped the Dionne Warwick show. The Dionne Warwick documentary. CNN. Now, I had wanted to do that and had not captured it. So we sat down and watched it together. A lot of history in that.
That a lot of people didn't know how significant she was and how she paid her own way.
We have to encourage our children to watch them with us. If you're going to make them see it.
Exactly. And it's interesting too, when you talk about social media and you look at TikTok and all the time that the children and adults are spending on TikTok. TikTok comes out of China, and isn't it interesting that China has limited TikTok to their youth to 1 hour a day, and that's only on Fridays, weekends, and public holidays. And our kids are on there from the time they get up to the time they go to bed at night.
But we're too busy screaming our liberties and allowing all kinds of harmful things to befall us. But again, the only place that you can control that to some degree is really in the home.
Exactly.
So the parents have to take a stronger role.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, many of them are children themselves. But
that's the problem.
They have to take a stronger role.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned TikTok because, when you have the federal government saying you need to take TikToks off all the phones, government-owned phones, and you're having this across many of the states are doing it at the state and local arenas, saying we got to get rid of TikTok. But if you look at when TikTok first came to America and that first big sale, the government and DOJ said this was going to be a problem, and they did not want TikTok to come into America. But the ex-president or the trader in chief in Florida overrode everybody because he says he knew best for it is for America. And now, fast forward a couple of years, this is the damage we get.
Absolutely. Well, you got to ask yourself, what's the value of TikTok? The only value it serves is for individuals to showcase themselves.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Alvin Kills is asking, what is the solution, my friends?
What is what?
Alvin Kills is asking, what is the solution?
The solution
for us to get out there and be honest to goodness parents. That's what the solution is.
That's for sure. And that's where it starts. It starts in the home.
Yes,
That's one
Yeah.
of the solutions. Yes, indeed. Wilma, let's get to having a building of science and technology named after you on the campus of your alma mater. Now, I know each one of us would love to have that opportunity. You know, I know the colonel would have the love to have the nursing building at Norfolk State named after him. And of course, I like to have the gym at Virginia Union named after me. The basketball gym. Named after, you know, called the Slim Nation Gym.
How about
But
that?
and Liv certainly would want a building at Norfolk State in Brown Hall
Oh,
renamed after
definitely
her.
so.
So how did that come about for one thing, and then how the feeling, the emotional feeling of having that happen had to be kind of overwhelming. So talk to us a little bit about that
Well,
experience.
I have to admit, it is, I guess, to date, it has been the crowning achievement of my life for several reasons. One of them is I know that I succeeded in life because of education.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the primary driver through all of that. And I think that to be able to be associated with something that is preparing others via education
Mm-hmm.
is big. It's just huge. The second thing out of that is that it is the science and technology building, not the maintenance building.
Mm-hmm.
So the science and technology building
Not the
is
cafeteria.
representative of my career.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Now what? And the third thing is a brand new, beautiful building. First
Yes,
thing
it
you see
is.
when you're on
Yes, it is.
Hampton's campus. So I get the greatest pleasure of any time over at Hampton, going through that gate and they ask me what my name is. I says, right there. And I go visit my building often. So it is absolutely a fantastic, it's the epitome of my life and career's work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how you get there is through really contributions. And let me tell you, and I say contributions, I don't mean you pull $1 million out your back pocket. Because I value education, I have contributed to Hampton from the very first year that I graduated. It was only like $25, but I contributed.
But you contributed.
Right. When I began to get into corporations in the major corporations match what you contributed.
Exactly.
So I contributed as much as I possibly could, so I could get as much as I possibly could from the corporation. Okay. So over a period of 30 years, and when I was, by the way, when I was working, I'll give you one example. One corporation matched you 2-to-1.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, whatever you put out there, they matched you 2-to-1.
Uh-huh.
Even in retirement, they still match it. So I'm still contributing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. In addition to that, again, because of the significance I think that education has played in my life, I've made it part of my trust arrangement. So I will certainly provide more for Hampton in my trust. So it was and it was the package of all that. As a matter of fact, one day I saw somebody get a building named after them, and so I happened to call Hampton over there, called the director of development at the time. I said, "Can you tell me how much I have contributed to Hampton over the years?" Pulled up that number. I said, "Wow." I said, "In that case, what's the building worth?" So he told me it's worth a little bit more than that. I said, "Well, I don't give you more than that," but he did pick up on that and had a conversation with Harvey, and Harvey called me over and talked through how we can make that happen. And he made that happen.
That is such an honor, I tell you.
Yeah.
You ride onto that campus and see this Norcomite's name on that building. It makes our heart sing, believe me.
That's right. Beautiful campus, beautiful building.
Campus, beautiful
That's right.
building. It really does.
And also, when you ride up, you can say, "I see that Truxton resident."
That Truxton is in the house as well.
That's right. That's right.
So it all started there. It all started there.
That's right. That's right.
On Killian Avenue.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So, Dr. Harvey, you know, I mean, you said you talked to him, and I guess after you talked to him and told him, because it was a combination of your contributions and also the significance you made in education. But
Right.
I guess it didn't take a whole lot of convincing to get Dr. Harvey on your side.
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't convince at all. He invited me in. He
Oh,
Oh,
invited me in and offered it. I was surprised. My
uh-huh.
jaw dropped. And when he invited me in, he had a mock-up of it. How would you like this? I said, like it? I love it. Make it happen. So he was the driver behind that. He made it happen.
That's good. That's good. That is good. Colonel?
so
Yeah. Now that Harvey's gone, what do you think about General Williams over there now? Have you met
He
him?
got his hands full, I can tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Because Harvey was
Yeah.
a long-standing, hardcore businessman.
Uh-huh.
So for Hampton, whatever it's worth, Hampton is financially strong.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
And of
is.
course, that made for some unhappy people who thought that some of their freedoms were denied or he didn't take care of them the way they thought they should be taken care of. And Harvey was aware of those issues and was working on those issues, but the students did exhibit some unrest.
Yes.
So now that Williams is in there, he's got his hands full trying to satisfy the students, but at the same time, keep the strength of the school strong.
Hmm.
And I have this feeling about you can't have the inmates running the penitentiary, so these kids better be careful. They're over there to get educated,
Hmm.
not to educate other folk. And I've already seen Hampton slipping in the polls.
Oh, yes, that's for
They
sure.
used to be number one on almost all counts. So sometimes you have to tell the kids, no, you cannot do this here because this is not in your best interest
Hmm.
now or for your future.
Hmm. Well, I'm hoping
And
he brings back the pharmacy program myself.
if you have the pharmacy program is a good example, and that's another example of Harvard's entrepreneurship. And sometimes it went too far because he tried everything. He had a equestrian program, he had a polo team, he had the pharmacy program, but the pharmacy program ran into trouble because you couldn't find strong enough instructors to get the children to the point, the students to the point that they could pass the test.
Well, they had in the beginning when they got their accreditation, it was time for the that core group of instructors to get a pay raise and all that because they
Right.
and Harvey would not give them a raise.
Right. Yes, he was a hard time. I agree with that. He held tight
Yeah,
with the
and
money.
that was the first indication that it was going to die. And right
Yeah.
after that, they left.
And once that happens, you're not going to get the top-notch people back in there. And
Yep.
that feeds right on into the nature of the program.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I just heard an article today on education where colleges themselves, and especially many companies, government in particular, are lightening their requirements for college education. Like jobs that require college educations in the past are no longer requiring them.
Mhm.
And colleges themselves are shifting to the side of preparing more technical people than they are preparing professionals, college professionals. So I think Williams has his hands full. He's going to be interested in how he balances out all those issues.
Yeah. You know, I think I read an article or several articles are out there like that in this new shift in this paradigm, because I think a lot of it is because the Confederates out there consider anybody with a degree an elite person, even
Right.
though they have their law degrees from Howard and Yale or whatever. Their constituents are basically non-college educated folks, and so they want to dumb down the educational system and also dumb down America, and that's why
exactly the word.
they continue to be reelected.
That's
so-
exactly the word. And
Yes.
unfortunately, the push for it is just so strong
Mhm.
because it's not just obviously that issue is not a color issue.
Mhm.
I mean that issue that describes Trump. Trump
Uh-huh.
follows the best example of that. So,
Uh-huh.
Yes.
but we have to be careful that we keep our own standards high, and
Thank
you
you.
have to do that despite all of the competition around you. And like I said, you know the stuff is going on the side, but you
Mm.
just close your ear to it and keep your eye on what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because we have to make sure all those professions are encouraged and filled. I mean, where would it be without the teachers? I mean, if
Uh-huh.
you you start swaying one way, and then like Colonel just mentioned, politics is coming into, all of a sudden politics is heavy in on HBCUs.
Exactly.
Tennessee
Exactly.
State, Tennessee State is once they start asking for that money, now they got a big audit.
Uh-huh.
It never had any problems before, with their audits, but they owe what, something like, Colonel, what, like $500 million.
$5,000 or something like that.
See, that,
Well, it's a lot of
that's
money that they
distracting.
owed, that
Big
they
money.
held back, and they actually owed. And when they start asking for it, then here comes, are y'all running y'all university right? Do we have to
Right.
take over? And
Yeah.
you see a lot of HBCUs having that same issue, with, especially if they're state university, their board is appointed by the governor. So
Right.
whoever the governor is, so then you end up with people on the board, the governing board, that don't have the best interests of the college in mind. So
Horne before that issue too, and Hampton being a private institution, kind of pushed it far down the line. But again, I believe, I didn't personally see it, but I believe he dealt with that the way he dealt with any other business interaction, kept the chatter on the side and kept the eye on the prize. He became a member of boards, he became, let's say, telephone buddies or close conversation with all of the powers that be. And when there was a pinch and he needed help, he could pick up the phone and get it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
in this whole discussion, we're talking about how politics has gotten into this, and the overriding piece of it is the institutional racism. And you look at the state of Mississippi and in this largest city they have at their capital, Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, yeah.
It's 80% blacks. They are living in South Africa back in apartheid. They've taken over the courts, they've taken over the city government, they've taken over everything. White Americans has done that. And they don't have any self-governance anymore. But that's the old South has come back. And
but I'm gonna say something that I know is not popular to hear. We got to step up to owning a piece of that problem, because we have gotten into these leadership positions. And when we get in them, we end up doing the same dumb thing that we got in there to prevent.
That's right. That's true.
So if you can kick out that guy, somebody's gonna kick you out. So we got to own our piece of this. If we want these things, we've got to be in a position of power, and we've got to behave like we're in a position of power.
Yeah, you are so correct. And so I listened to the mayor of Jackson, since I'm on their case now, and he's afraid to even call out the governor and tell the governor you're a racist and the racist policies that you have, and this is wrong. And then so other than getting a plan together, when you have 80% minorities in your city and less than 15% of them vote, put a good voting registration movement in there, get everybody mass voting registration, and they could overturn
very easily.
Governorship.
But he's got to put his energy on getting the people to vote, not on calling out the racism. We all know that's there.
But you got to
do
call it out first, and you got to make sure that people know that you'll call it out, and just not him and Hall like a lot of folks do.
Yeah. I'm going to disagree on that one, because I don't think you need to say it, because you know it's there. Everybody knows it's there. So why waste any energy talking about it? Spend all of your energy instead on solving the problem.
Yes, I believe in solving the problem, but I also believe in calling it out. And
I understand.
And if you to me, if you don't like it, then I'm here.
Well, sometimes calling it out makes you impossible for you to get your solution.
Yes. But how you do it too? How you do it?
Looks like we're talking about a whole different show here. have a debate on racism, because definitely they have no problem calling us racist for being black. and being concerned
But
about
again,
our own race. But so that's a whole
but we
nother.
all know that's been going on for ages.
It
It's
has
been
been,
going on
that's
for
for
ages.
sure.
The only difference
That's for
is now
sure.
they're right out. Well, no, they always been right out there in the open, but
I
not
used to tell people when I was working, and as a matter of fact, it was a favorite line of mine when I would run into a hardcore racist, even on my board. I say, this is the way I came in the world. This is where I'm gonna go out the world.
That's
So if
right.
anybody got a problem with it, it's yours.
Yeah.
I am comfortable with it.
Uh-huh.
So deal with me.
Yeah.
Well, they can do what they want, but I'm not gonna spend any time on it.
Wilma, we're getting close to an hour, and I want to get this because since you've been in your job and even in retirement, you've been doing a lot of traveling throughout the world.
Oh yeah.
And you've been a lot of places. And I just wanted to ask you, all the places you've been, what has been the most significant one to you and that had the most emotional, probably, impact on you?
You know, it's interesting you should ask that question. I've been to all 7 continents. I've been to 63 countries in all 50 states.
Uh-huh.
And the last big trip I took was to Egypt.
Uh-huh.
And I think that was most impactful because Egypt has recorded history dating back to 4000 BC. Recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go back and see what was going on in Egypt from then.
Mm-hmm.
And you know Egypt originated with Black Nubians.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You rarely see a dark person in Egypt these days.
Exactly.
And the reason for that is simple. All of these conquering countries that would come in and take them over for 200 or 300 years would eventually bred the black out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But all of that is recorded. So now that they can read the hieroglyphics,
Mm-hmm.
you can go back and understand what really happened with all of those years. And when they summarized the bit that they summarized for us on various tours, we found that really there's a pattern. There's a pattern that says, you know, the more things change, the more they say the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, a new group of people would come in, put a new person at the head who would determine who you worship. And you did that for 300 years. And then another person would come in and conquer, and they put another person at the head, and you worship them for 200 or 300 years. But it's the same pattern. It's the same story over and over. And the Egyptians were in a position, in more cases, that they just could not win those wars that they lost. So they folded right on into the community, not because they chose to, but I'm sure they were forced to. But at this stage, they will tell you that there is not racism. That's what they'll say now. I'm not going to say that's true.
Yes, indeed.
But I tell you the truth, I didn't encounter any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I did not encounter any of it. And the classes are very strong. I mean, you got a clear lower class and a clear middle class and a clear upper class. It's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But and they know how to pick it out of people who come there,
Mm-hmm.
where you fit in the class structure.
Oh,
But
wow.
I gotta tell you, I did not encounter any racism anywhere, and I know I'm still traveling. I have trouble walking. Let me tell you, I never was able to take 2 steps that somebody wasn't at my elbow.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Wow, yeah, thanks for that. And all the places you've been, and it's amazing. That's the most impactful. And I can understand why you said
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
when we got a chance to read those hieroglyphics.
Hieroglyphics, which other people read them and interpret them and explain them for us too. But that's where else can you look at 4,000 years of history?
That's right. That's right. Wow.
That's recorded, like you said. Most of it's
That's right.
passed down, by word of mouth. But we're winding down, and I'll give the Leah. Go ahead, Leah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to give the host an opportunity to have the last words, and our guest will definitely have the last word before we close out.
Oh, I don't have any last words other than thanks for allowing me to tell my story. I'll be interested in how it plays. So whatever feedback you get, I'd be interested in hearing it.
Well, as Alvin Kill says here, you are a classy lady. believe me. And and you, I am so delighted to have this opportunity to hear your story. I've heard your story through others, but to hear your story through your words has a major impact as opposed to hearing it from others. So I want to say, you know, I'm so thankful that you chose to come on. I'm so thankful that this being the first day of Women in History Month, and what a woman to have on at this time. A woman from the Truxton grounds and who went on to Norcom High School, graduated, went on to Hampton University, and now has a building named after her on the campus of Hampton University. I want to say it is indeed an honor to have you on Portsmouth Coffee Talk on this evening.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll echo what Leah said, and thank you for coming on and telling your story. And your story doesn't end today, because every day you live on this earth and your story is being retold. Every day a student goes into the building over there at Hampton University, your story is being told every day. And so that's a major contribution. And I had one other question before I go. When you were at Xerox, was there a Cleveland Martin that worked over there with you as a management? Cleveland Martin.
Say the name again?
Cleveland Martin.
I don't recognize that name.
Yeah, don't worry. That's just a little side thing.
Okay. I know, I run into that a lot.
So, but keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, thank you much.
And I just have to say, you know, growing up on Killian Avenue, I can imagine a house full of girls. It had to be a competitive household. But I also say now you were honored by the Truxton neighborhood, you know, doing one of their programs, and you have the building named after you at Hampton University. Now we have to. It's a missing link there.
It is a missing link, and we're going to feel that link come. We're going to feel that link come September 29th through October 1st for the grand reunion. So we're going to have to feel that link
right here. So
we're going to have to feel it.
That's what I was saying. We got to, you know, feel that missing link, because we do. So, and I guess it would be appropriate this year as we celebrate 110 years or more.
Actually, James, from the school board, they're saying 145.
145.
Not 110.
It's official now.
It's official. It comes out of the Chestnut Street School. Built in 1878.
Wow.
So if there's any a better time to be recognized by IC Norcom, this is the year.
This is the year.
And Wilma, we appreciate you coming on, and we enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for sharing your story and all the other things you shared with us. And maybe we'll have you come back again, you know, because I'm sure it's a lot more that you can share, especially with all your work.
I sure love to talk and debate.
And listen, Alvin Kill says, that's why I asked.
Well, this is called Portsmouth Coffee Talk. So talk is part of what we do here.
Talk is part of what we do.
So thank you very much. And Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice,
our community,
okay,
and our future.
And we salute
you. We salute you, Wilma.
Thank you. Thank
you for all of your achievements.
Thank you for watching, everybody, and watch as we upload this to our YouTube channel.
I will do that.
And join us next Monday as we still into the Women's History Month, and we'll have our own Senator Louise Lucas as our guest.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night. I would do that.